How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got Harem Jericho and Elizabeth? Part 1. Huge shout out to Ghost of the Kitsune for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. The long-haired blonde man who appeared to be about 17 could be seen walking down a dirt road. He was wearing an orange and black jumpsuit that was ripped and faded, with black toe-less sandals and a black headband that had a metal plate with a leaf engraved on it. He had blue eyes and 3 whisker marks on each cheek with bandages wrapped around his right arm. This was Naruto Uzumaki, and at this moment he was in a new world. While he had been in this world for 4 months already, mainly staying in the cave that he first arrived in for the first 3 months, he was now exploring this new world due to the incident that had happened a month ago. He had awoken in the aforementioned cave to find out that he had somehow been summoned by a woman who he called Violet due to the cloak she wore that concealed her features and her denying giving him her name. She had explained that she was a mage, a term that at the time had confused Naruto, and that she was just experimenting with trying to summon something from other worlds. She had also explained that she wasn't really expecting to find anything, so his appearance was a surprise to her. He could actually remember quite well what all had transpired between Violet and himself during their first meeting, and how they had come to an agreement about what they were going to do afterwards. Flashback. A bright flash of light was the first thing that Naruto noticed as he awoke from his sleep. Quickly jumping up, he was quick to realize that he was no longer in his bed or apartment where he was just a few minutes ago, but was inside what appeared to be a cave. Looking around, he was quick to notice a few things like the weird markings on the ground below him and the figure wrapped in a large violet cloak that hid all of their appearance from the blonde. The figure's appearance just put Naruto more on edge, as they didn't look like someone who wasn't up to no good. Who are you? Where am I? Those were the first questions that came to the blonde's mind. The figure just released an intrigued hum. I wasn't expecting this. Where are you from? Asked the figure, whose voice sounded female. Her question just seemed to annoy Naruto even more than he already was. What the hell do you mean, where am I from? From the looks of things you're the one who brought me here, stated Naruto. He was only seconds away from attacking and getting his answers the hard way if he had to. This woman, if her voice was anything to go by, had him a bit worried though. He had just returned home after getting his new prosthetic arm when he had felt a pulling sensation in his body. The next thing he knew, there was a flash of light, and then he was in a cave, with a suspiciously dressed woman being the only other occupant. Those weren't what really bothered him, though. There were 2 things that worried him the most, the first being that this woman had somehow summoned him. Now, well, he was no stranger to being summoned, only the toads should be able to do it. There was also the fact that she might have been summoning Kurama, but that should be impossible, since the fox was sealed in him and could not be summoned. Then there was the other rather glaring problem. The woman before him had no chakra in her body. Now, while his sensing capabilities weren't too good outside of Sage Mode, he could still sense the chakra of others if they were close by, which the woman definitely was. Instead, he felt some other type of energy in her. He didn't know how exactly to describe how it felt, he just knew without a doubt that it wasn't chakra. That made him even more suspicious. Everyone had chakra in them to some degree, even if it was a minuscule amount. To not have any was unheard of. This made him wonder who this woman before him was and what exactly she wanted from him. All of these thoughts had gone through his mind in just a few seconds as the woman began to speak again. Well, it is true that I brought you here, I also have no idea where you came from. I wasn't really aiming my spell, just powering it. This caused Naruto's eyes to narrow. What do you mean you weren't aiming? Are you trying to say that I was just summoned here at random? He really didn't want to believe the woman's word, but he could sense no deceit from her yet. It's exactly as I said. I wasn't even really expecting to bring anything forth, but here you are. The fact that you share such a resemblance in both appearance and language to the people of this world is another wonder. The final part of her statement caused warning bells to go off in Naruto's head. What exactly did she mean by that statement? The way she was talking was like he wasn't in the same world anymore, which worried Naruto greatly. What's all of this talk about this world? It almost sounded like you're trying to say I'm in another dimension or something. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, while the knowledge of other worlds and species might be a new concept to you, I would like it if you didn't panic, was her simple request. Naruto did panic, though. He quickly closed his eyes and activated his Sage Mode, and he instantly knew that she wasn't lying. He could sense other people around a few miles from where they were, but none of them, not even the animals he could sense, had any chakra in their bodies at all. Now, while new worlds and species weren't really a new experience to the blonde, he had fought Kagaya though numerous dimensions after all. He just didn't like the idea of someone pulling him into a strange new one. While he wasn't completely sure, he seriously doubted that this was one of Kagaya's dimensions, which means he was in unknown territory where nobody from his home might be able to reach him, including Sasuke. This caused Naruto to look at the cloaked woman with apprehension. "Send me back to my home." It was a simple request, one that he really hoped she would comply with. The woman's reply shattered his hope of things going good for him. "I'm sorry, but I can't. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't really paying attention to the spell, just trying to see if it would activate. I wasn't expecting to summon anything at first, if at all, so I have no idea where you came from. So you're trying to tell me that you can't send me back home?" Naruto could feel his anger at this woman beginning to rise, and so did his power. Immediately the area around them began to shake as if an earthquake was happening. The woman looked around in shock, though Naruto couldn't see this due to the strange power she could sense the boy releasing, along with the actual amount of it. He had just become even more intriguing to her, though she would have to stop things from getting violent. She quickly came up with a way to hopefully placate him before things got too far out of hand. "Wait, I'll need time." The boy seemed to stop charging his energy any more than he already had, which she took as a sign to continue. "Like I said earlier, I don't know where you came from, but I'm sure that I can find out with some studying. Clearly your appearance shows that there are more worlds than I thought, and I wouldn't want to risk sending you to the wrong one." She really didn't expect other life in other dimensions. Well, she knew of others, the demon and goddess clans, she didn't know there was more. This was a good time for her to take a deeper look into her experiment. Naruto thought about what she had suggested and saw merit in her thinking. Who actually knew how much other worlds were out there? It wouldn't do to just get sent to another random one, he would still be in the same situation. But that thought, and having no real other choice, Naruto lowered his chakra back to normal levels. He looked at the woman before him, who still wasn't lying thankfully, and released a sigh. "How long will this take? I have people that'll be worried when they find out I'm missing." He could just imagine the village's response when they find out he's missing. They'd probably try and search the entire continent for him and even contact the toads. Naruto almost slapped himself as he finally remembered he could also reverse summon himself to Mount Myoboku. With a quick hand sign, Naruto tried to perform the reverse summons, but nothing happened. Frowning at the result, Naruto decided to try and just summon a toad to him to try and get help. He quickly bit his finger to draw blood and slammed his hand on the ground. Nothing happened. Seeing this, Naruto decided to try again, though this time he used enough chakra to summon Gamabunta himself 10 times over, since the dimensional difference might mean he needed more chakra. It wasn't the best idea since they were in a cave, but Naruto wasn't thinking too clearly right now. Once again nothing happened, which caused Naruto's hopes of returning home immediately to drop once more. The woman just watched as the boy before her tried to do something with his energy, though she didn't know what. She continued to study him as he was the most exciting thing that she had come across in years. She wondered what his energy was and what all it could do, hopefully she'd get to study him a bit more. She was also quite serious about finding where he had come from. That would give her a lot more subjects to observe. She was really glad about her blunder now, as, if she was focusing, she might not have gotten such an amazing catch. Seeing the disappointed look on the boy's face, which she assumed meant that whatever he was trying to do had failed, she decided to give him a little incentive. "Look, just let me study you and give me a little while, and I'm sure I'll be able to find where you came from." "What exactly do you mean by study, and how long exactly do I have to wait?" The cloaked woman seemed to ponder his question for a minute before answering. "Well, it could take anywhere from a couple minutes to a couple months, maybe longer, since I'll have to tweak the spell to allow me to view the different worlds, and I don't know how many worlds are actually out there for me to have to observe to find yours. I'll also need to study your energy, since it might make finding your home easier." The entire thought of the situation caused mixed reactions from both people. Naruto was angry that he might have to spend months in this world and was apprehensive about letting someone study his chakra, but he had no choice, while the woman was ecstatic about the chance to observe new worlds. Naruto then sighed again. "Fine. It's not like I really have much of a choice about this, but I'm only allowing you to study how my chakra feels, and that's it. You should be able to find my dimension based on that alone." The woman frowned at this. Clearly the boy was hesitant to allow too much information about his chakra, a word she now committed to memory as the name of his energy, to be revealed, which rose her interest to even newer heights. Seeing that this was too good of a chance to pass up, she agreed. She would just have to work a bit harder to get what she wanted. She always loved to challenge her mind, so this would be a perfect opportunity. Seeing that they had both agreed to their arrangement with no more need to fight, Naruto finally decided that introductions were in order, since he had no idea how long he might be here. "The name's Naruto, by the way." The woman nodded at the introduction. "Well, Naruto, I would give you my name, but it's hard for people to pronounce, so for now you can call me whatever you wish." She did have another name she used, but she was trying to remain anonymous still. The blonde frowned at her as he looked over the bulky cloak she was wearing that hid all of her features. This gave him a perfect idea for a name. Fine then, I'll just call you Violet. So, where exactly do we start? From that moment the two would work together to find out where it was exactly that Naruto had come from. Of course Naruto had also began studying his companion and trying to learn as much about this world as he could from her. Flashback end. From that day onwards Naruto had decided to stay in the cave. He wanted to remain close to the only thing that might be able to take him home, so had refused Violet's offer for him to return to where she lived so she could get him lodging. While he did want to see this new world, he wanted to get back to his own even more, so he had secretly been working on his own way back home, a suggestion that had been made by Kurama the following day, as apparently he had been asleep through their whole arrival and meeting of Violet. So he had stayed in the cave and studied the markings that brought him here to try and see if he could pair his sealing capabilities with it to get back home, but that didn't work. He didn't give up though. Seeing that he couldn't rely on what brought him here to get back, he decided to create his own space-time technique. Now that had been a tough nut to crack, however Naruto wasn't one to give up. It had taken him 3 months of working in secret before he had finally gotten the technique down. Since he was most adept at sending his chakra to his palms, he had used his hands as the catalyst, sort of how the Sharingan was the catalyst for Obito's who he was mimicking. Since he didn't have any way to mark his world, his technique would have to be able to carry him anywhere without a marker, like the Kamui did. Luckily he had been around many space-time techniques to know how they felt. Using this and his newfound understanding of how chakra worked, it wasn't long before Naruto had created his new technique, which he was completely giddy about. Leave it to him being stuck in a new world to test the limits of what he could accomplish. He had done something that only one other person without some type of special eyes had done to his knowledge, though on a grander scale. That was to be expected, though, as nobody understood chakra and how it worked like he did, nobody who was alive anyway. And so it was with this achievement, after many tests to make sure it was safe by teleporting clones to places he could see outside the cave and being stuck in this world for 3 months, that Naruto had activated his new technique to return home at last. Now, a month later, Naruto, still in this new dimension, wished that he hadn't done that. The pain and anguish that he had experienced on that day a month ago would haunt him for the rest of his life. It was so bad that he had literally lost control, something that hadn't happened in months, and had attacked Violet when she came upon him crying on the floor. That confrontation didn't end well as, while she had managed to escape, Britannia had a few less mountain ranges to the south. And so, after finally calming down, Naruto had decided to explore this new world. He had been going around Britannia for a month now on his own and had been learning even more about this place. As Naruto continued walking down another dirt road leading to wherever, he decided to speak to the voices in his head, and yes, there was more than one now. Apparently the incident from a month ago was so bad that it caused his mind to split, or at least that's how Kurama put it. He entered into the mindscape, his body on the outside world now moving on autopilot, to see his other half sitting besides Kurama. This wasn't Yami, however, but something else. They were both still him, though they had different goals they wanted to achieve, and neither could just get rid of the other by just accepting them or something. So instead they came to an agreement. It's been a month already, and you still haven't found anything in this world worth our time. Remember we have an agreement. Spoke the other Naruto. Yes, I remember. If I don't find anything in this world to care for, then you get to take over and we leave. This was their goals. Due to what had happened a month ago, the one in control of their body wanted to stay in this world. The other one wanted to leave this world as soon as possible, but he would give it a chance so that the peace could be kept. If they did find something in this world then fine, but if not, then it would be his turn to take over. Seeing that his other half was still not giving up yet, the other Naruto got up and walked further into the mindscape. This was one good thing about him, he wasn't an ever-present nag. He just stayed quietly to himself in some part of their mind, only coming around every now and then to speak to Kurama. He wouldn't bother the one in charge until it became obvious that there was nothing, then they would switch. Releasing a sigh, Naruto looked at Kurama. Damn, that guy's pushy. It's only been a month, at least give me some time. Kurama could only nod at his words. In truth, I hope you find something to keep us here, because I truly fear what will happen if you fail and your other half gets control. Naruto just frowned at that. They both knew what would happen and it wouldn't be good. After a few minutes of contemplative silence between the two, Kurama spoke again. So when are we going to head to one of these kingdoms we've been hearing about? Maybe you can become one of those holy knights that everyone seems to be talking about. I've actually been thinking about heading to one now, since there isn't really much to do. If they're really the protectors of the kingdoms like we heard, then I might be able to find a reason to stay with them. Where is the nearest kingdom? Asked Kurama. Naruto quickly recalled what he had seen on the map that he had acquired from the beginning of his journey. Well, the closest kingdom to where we are right now is Lions, but it should only take us a few weeks to reach there at our current walking pace. Why so long? You can get there in minutes or less if you actually want to. Kurama couldn't quite understand why his partner would need to take so long to reach Lions. I want to take in the view and see more of what this world might have to offer, was the simple reply from Naruto. Kurama just hummed in agreement. He really wanted his friend to be happy. Well then I guess we'll be taking the scenic route. Naruto just smiled up at the massive fox before he left his mind to return to the real world. Please hurry up and find something, or things won't end well, thought Kurama as he left. Back in the real world, Naruto continued on his journey with his final destination in mind. Over the next few weeks Naruto had passed through a few small towns and seen quite a few wonders that made Britannia beautiful. However, he was disappointed. The reason was because Naruto couldn't find one particular thing anywhere he had been so far on this continent, and that was ramen. When he had asked Violet if she could bring him some, she had replied that she didn't know what it was. Even after Naruto had described the dish and how it was made to the best of his abilities, she still said that she had never heard of such a thing. In truth, it was one of the main driving forces for Naruto to want to leave so quickly. And it appeared that nobody else had any idea about it either. He was tempted to go and check out some of the other continents to see if they had any, though he might move on to them if he didn't find anything of interest in Britannia. The deal was that he would get to try and find happiness in this world, which wasn't just comprised of this single continent. He would explore them all to see the full extent of this world and what it had to offer. Soon he had reached the Kingdom of Lions. It was a large village surrounded by a wall with a castle on the hill overlooking everything else. Naruto couldn't help but let out a whistle in appreciation at the sight. He quickly walked through the entrance and into the kingdom, though he was receiving a few weird looks from everyone. It was probably because he was walking around in what could almost pass for rags. I'm going to need some new clothes soon, but how do I get them with no money? He didn't want to walk around looking as he was now. He would have to find some way to get some new clothes, though he knew of a way to fix his appearance for the time being. Quickly walking into an alleyway, Naruto made sure that he wasn't being watched before he made a simple hand sign. With a simple application of the transformation jutsu, he was now dressed in attire similar to what other men were wearing. Stepping out of the alley revealed Naruto to be wearing black pants with an orange button-up long-sleeved shirt and some black boots on his feet. He would have done this before he entered the kingdom, but he hadn't cared for his appearance in months, which was why his hair was now in a long ponytail. This didn't mean that he had forsaken his hygiene or anything, just that the clothes he wore wasn't really a bother to him, especially since he wasn't really around much people before he left the cave. He continued on his way to try and find out more about these holy knights. He asked some of the people what they thought of them and had received mostly rave reviews from the citizens they protected. This gave Naruto some more hope and willingness to join them, though now he had to find where they were stationed and what it took to actually join. He hoped that there wouldn't be some type of written or verbal test about stuff like the history of the kingdom or anything like that. It took a little more time and questioning before Naruto finally found some information on where he could find the holy knights. He could have just entered sage mode, but wanted to take his time with everything. He quickly came upon a walled area that he could sense a lot of power behind. Seeing no entrance in sight, Naruto crouched down a bit before leaping up, easily surpassing the almost 50-meter wall. Landing on the top of the wall, Naruto saw a most peculiar sight. Below him there were dozens of people, both men and women from what he could tell, wearing all types of strange armors and using many different abilities. This actually made Naruto curious as to how practical all of those bulky metal suits actually were, though no one down below seemed to be having any trouble with them. As he continued to observe, he felt a tingling sensation in the back of his mind. It was a feeling he knew, so he wasted no time in moving from his current position. Right after he moved, what looked like lightning crashed down on his previous position. Soon the lightning calmed down to reveal a pink-haired man where it hit. He wore a blue and silver armor with a brown belt around his waist with a sheath attached, which was probably for the sword in his grasp, which had a curved design at the end. Before Naruto could say anything, he felt a presence appear behind him, which once more made him move, dodging another attack. He jumped down and landed on some type of stage or raised platform. On the wall before him was a circular symbol depicting a winged woman carrying a shield and sword in the clouds. He looked behind him to see that he now had the attention of all the present holy knights upon him. Naruto just raised his hand and waved nonchalantly. "Yo. How's it going?" he asked loud enough for most of them to hear him. This caused all of the present knights to put their focus solely on the intruder, but before Naruto could say anything more, he had two blades pressed against his neck. He had sensed the two men coming, but didn't want to seem more hostile by appearing to put up a fight. So instead he raised his hands in surrender as he observed the two men before him. The first man had long burgundy hair and a short beard. He was wearing red armor with spikes on the shoulders and had two long pieces looking like coattails. The other man had short white hair and a goatee. He wore a full body armor with a robe over it that was wide around the upper part and had a diamond pattern with what looked like horns. Naruto could instantly tell that these two men were more dangerous than everyone else here, though they both had a dark feeling about them, the one in red even more so. He didn't know what it was, but he didn't trust any of the two. "Who are you, and why are you here?" asked the white-haired one. "We would appreciate it if you didn't lie, either," spoke the one in red. Naruto just sighed before replying. "The name's Naruto, and I was hoping I could get a chance to join the Holy Knights of Lions." This caused the two men's eyes to widen a bit as they weren't expecting this when they had first sensed the boy. "And what makes you think that you have what it takes to be a knight?" asked the one in red. "Well, maybe because I want to protect the innocent and use my abilities for the greater good and all that," spoke Naruto with a shrug. He still didn't seem to care about the swords at his throat. This caused the two men to consider what he was saying. He obviously had some good reactions if he could dodge Gilthander and avoid Vivian's attack after she teleported behind him. They could also tell that he had purposely allowed them to catch him, showing that he probably could have avoided both of them if he wanted. "And what type of abilities do you have, Naruto?" Once more the white-haired one questioned him. He really needed to figure out their names. "Don't you think it would be polite to introduce yourselves first before questioning me about my abilities?" stated Naruto, getting silent gasps from some of the spectators, the two who had first attacked him and were now standing off to the side being among those. It was at this time that Naruto saw who it was that had teleported behind him. She appeared to be a woman wearing a red dress and white gloves with armor and a weird helmet that looked like two hands were twisting her head. She actually reminded him a bit of Violet since she could teleport also, along with a few other abilities, though he could tell by her energy that she wasn't her. He seriously had to wonder who the fuck came up with some of the designs for armors that he was seeing, cause clearly they might not be in their right state of mind, though Naruto really couldn't talk about that due to his own mental split. Seeing that Naruto was waiting for a response, the two men decided to introduce themselves. "I am Dreyfus, one of the two great Holy Knights of Lions," spoke the one in red. "I am Hendrickson, the other great Holy Knight of Lions," finished the one with white hair. This caused a large smile to form on Naruto's face. These two sounded important, they might be who he needed to talk to, so he could join the Holy Knights. "You two wouldn't happen to be the ones in charge, would you?" Seeing the two give a slight nod, Naruto continued. "That's great. So if I can prove myself to one of you, then will you let me join?" The two men couldn't help but be taken aback by the boy's almost pleading words. It really sounded like he wanted nothing more than to join the Knights, but that didn't mean that he could be trusted. The two looked towards one another and had a silent conversation between them. They could feel the boy's power flowing through him, though it felt extremely weird. He also didn't seem to be a threat, so they decided to give him a chance. They were truly interested in what else the boy might be capable of, though they would also keep an eye on him and move to eliminate him if he tried anything. "Fine. We'll give you a chance. All you have to do is beat Gilthander here in a fight and we'll induct you into our ranks." They knew that this was probably a bad matchup as Gilthander was a diamond rank knight after all, and there were numerous ones here that were weaker than him, but they wanted to test the full scope of what the blonde could do. Naruto just smiled at this. "Alright, finally I get to do something interesting." With that he walked towards Gilthander, Dreyfus and Hendrickson, having already lowered their swords, and held his hand out in a fist. "Let's have a good match, alright." Gilthander just looked at him blankly before turning around and walking towards a sparring ring that was nearby. Naruto was quick to follow him as he heard the whispers from the others surrounding them. "Damn, that kid just got the short end of the stick. How long do you think it'll be before Gilthander's finished with him? I hope we have some healing stones on hand for the poor kid. He doesn't stand a chance." These were just some of the whispers that Naruto heard, which made him smile more. This guy appeared to be really powerful and respected, so if he could take him down, then they would have no reason to not let him join. He quickly hastened his pace to hurry get to the ring. As he entered he saw both Dreyfus and Hendrickson to the front of the crowd, paying rapt attention to him. He was glad for this as it gave him more reason to make this enjoyable for them. One of them could very well be his ticket to joining the Knights, he wouldn't fail in his endeavor. Everyone quieted down once Dreyfus raised his hand. "This is merely an exhibition match, so none of you are allowed killing blows. The match will continue until either knockout, submission, or we stop it." The two combatants in the ring nodded that they understood. Seeing this, Dreyfus continued. "You may begin." Instantly Gilthander was on the move. He quickly appeared behind Naruto in a flash of lightning with his sword already in motion. Instead of the quick win that most were expecting, Naruto simply ducked to dodge the sword swing. "So, you dodging me earlier wasn't just luck. Too bad that this is my slowest speed." With those words Gilthander increased his speed more, hoping to end the match quickly. He didn't want to take advantage of the kid, but he would have to end his dream for the time being. Once more, however, Naruto dodged. This caused some surprise for Gilthander, especially since the blonde still had that ridiculous smile on his face and hadn't had to move from his starting position yet. Why aren't you attacking? You do realize that just dodging won't impress anyone, right? I'm aware of that. I just thought that I'd give you a chance to show me what you've got, so when I win nobody can say you didn't try. This caused Gilthander to scowl. To think that some kid was underestimating him. It looked like it was time to get a bit more serious with the kid, he'd apologized to him after. With that thought, Gilthander used another of his abilities. Instantly a bolt of lightning came down from the sky and struck where Naruto stood. Everyone was surprised when he didn't try and dodge the attack, but were even more surprised when the smoke cleared to reveal a completely unharmed blonde. What? How, you didn't dodge, or even block my attack? Well, normally an attack like that would be better avoided, to me it wasn't a threat. With this statement everyone watched as lightning burst forth to surround Naruto's body. So you use lightning magic also? That explains how you nullified my attack just now. Spoke Gilthander. He wasn't really expecting the kid to be a lightning user like him, but at least now he knew why the kid didn't seem worried. He would have to show him why that was a mistake. Gilthander quickly began raising his magic power, causing the lightning surrounding him to increase. Imagine his surprise once more as Naruto began matching his output easily. This earned a growl from Gilthander. So you really are strong, that's good. It means that I won't have to hold back. With that the two combatants took off in flashes of lightning. All most people could see was lightning going around the ring with arcs being shot out from time to time. This caused the other knights to retreat a bit from the ring as to avoid being struck by a stray bolt of lightning. The only ones who hadn't moved were Dreyfus and Hendrickson, who could also still follow the fight clearly. He's keeping up pretty well against Gilthander, said Hendrickson. No. He's moving slower on purpose. He's just giving the illusion that he's merely keeping up, said Dreyfus, causing Hendrickson to take a closer look at the fight to see that it was true. While they could see that Gilthander was struggling a bit and beginning to get winded, Naruto still looked like he had at the start of the fight. That showed the two that Naruto had a lot of magic and stamina to go on this long without showing signs of fatigue. Soon the two men in the ring finally separated from each other, with Naruto now holding a blade made of lightning in his hand. While none of them had managed to injure the other, it was clear to see that Gilthander was in worse shape than Naruto. I can't believe that little punk is keeping up with Gilthander. It looks like he's winning actually. Amazing. Both of their power is incredible. Once more Naruto listened to the voices of the spectators, glad that he had managed to prove himself a little to them, though they weren't the ones he needed to impress. Remembering this, Naruto decided to kick it up even more. You know that lightning magic mostly increases the speed of the user, meaning the faster you are naturally, the faster you can go using lightning. This is one of the ways to move faster. Gilthander just looked at the blonde in confusion. He knew how the speed increase of lightning worked. It was then that he came to the realization of what the boy was saying. After all, there was another way to increase your speed. Seeing the shocked look on the Pinkette's face, Naruto smiled. I see you've caught on. Well, you have been increasing your energy output continuously throughout the fight to go faster, I have merely been responding. Gilthander was now a little nervous. It was clear that this kid had more power than him, though how much more he wasn't quite sure. Naruto was quick to show him, though. Allow me to show you a fraction of my power. But that statement both great holy knights had to back up from the ring so as to not get struck by lightning without having to use their own magic. They watched as the lightning around Naruto increased to such an intensity that the floor below him was literally being melted just from his presence. Gilthander felt his respect for this boy grow. While he was losing to a younger opponent, he couldn't deny the kid's skill and power, but he would not give up. He quickly crouched down and began charging all of the remaining magic he could. Instantly his lightning output increased also, though not to the level of his opponent. This was fine, though. For the first time in a long time Gilthander felt a thrill run down his spine at the prospect of having a good opponent. The two men watched each other from their crouched positions, both swords drawn back and ready to swing. As if an invisible signal had been given, they both disappeared in flashes and swung their swords at the other, which resulted in a glorious explosion. The shockwave alone blasted all of the other holy knights off of their feet while destroying the ground they stood on. Both Dreyfus and Hendrickson had to actively use their magic to avoid the same fate as their subordinates. As everything began to settle down, the two men had already knew the outcome of the battle. Everyone else waited with bated breath for the dust to settle, and when it did they could see only one figure standing, and that was Naruto. Laying behind him face down and unconscious with a smile on his face was Gilthander. Before Naruto could take a moment to enjoy his victory, the woman from earlier appeared before him using her teleportation. As soon as she went to attack him, for whatever reason, she was stopped by the booming voice of Hendrickson. That's enough, Vivian. If you have time to attack our new recruit, then you should also have the time to take Gilthander and make sure he gets healed up." This seemed to stop her in her tracks as she quickly rushed over to Gilthander with the two disappearing afterwards. Seeing the threat handled, Naruto looked towards Hendrickson. "So that means I got in, right?" he asked, referring to Hendrickson's earlier statement. This caused the white-haired man to nod his head. "Yes. You showed great power and the control to use it, so I hereby afford you the rank of Crystal Knight." While most were surprised by the ranking, it was the lowest besides apprentice rank, the most of them understood why. The kid might be powerful, but he was still an unknown. The fact that he had even gotten into the Holy Knights the way he had was a surprise. He still had to earn the trust and respect of the other knights in order to rank up. Naruto didn't care about any of this. He now had something to do to try and make his life in this new world more bearable. Hopefully he could find a purpose in all of this, for everyone's sake. As everyone began dispersing, with some giving him mixed looks, he also began to leave the training grounds. Before he could get far, Dreyfus called out to him. "Be here first thing in the morning. We'll work to get a better idea of what you can do and how well you'll be able to handle your new responsibilities." Naruto just turned around and gave a mock salute. "Yes, sir," was his reply as he turned and continued on his journey. Before he left, he realized he had one more problem, so he turned to address the man once more. "Is there anywhere in town that I can stay? I just came into town today and I don't have any money for someplace to stay yet." The two looked towards one another. "There is a barrack for Holy Knights that provide food, shelter and basic armors for you all. You can stay there as long as you're a knight or until you find someplace else." This caused Naruto to smile. He could actually get some new clothes as well, things were starting to look better for him. After the two had given him the instructions on how to find the barracks and on what to tell the person running it, he left so that he could hopefully get some rest in an actual bed. While sleeping outside or in a cave didn't bother him, a nice bed was still a welcomed reprieve. After getting to the barracks and having to give a bit of information including his sizes, Naruto entered the plain room they offered. The room only had a twin-sized bed in the center with a small dresser. He didn't care about that though and quickly entered and, after taking a shower in the shared men's bath, headed to bed. He hoped things would continue to get better so that he could begin enjoying his life again, but he knew that only time would tell. 1 month later. It had been a month since Naruto had joined the ranks of the Holy Knights of Lions, and he could safely say that he was enjoying it. He had already done a few missions and had even earned himself some money, though he was still living in the barracks and hadn't shopped for any clothes yet. He had even managed to upgrade himself to Ruby rank by handling all of his missions quickly and efficiently. One of the biggest things that had happened was he had gotten a sparring partner in Gilthander. The two could be found many days sparring each other and bouncing ideas off each other for new techniques, with Vivian always somewhere nearby. This also allowed Naruto to sense Gilthander's animosity towards the woman. When Naruto had asked him what his problem was with her, he had almost looked like he was going to tell him, but then had decided against it. Even though Naruto had beaten him, Gilthander didn't hold a grudge about it. Instead, he had stated that Naruto was exactly what he needed to get stronger, hence their sparring together, though Naruto still only stuck to his lightning-style jutsu. He practiced everything else he had in secret since he still didn't trust Dreyfus or Hendrickson. At first he had thought that they just had a lot of negativity, but after using his Sage Mode, Naruto had come to another realization. There was something inside Dreyfus. He didn't know what it was, but that was what was giving off most of the negative emotions. Knowing this, though, caused Naruto to have some problems. For all he knew, Dreyfus could be this world's version of some type of Jinchuriki, like he is. They could have put something in him, which was why he was as strong as he was. So with this new information, Naruto had started subtly trying to find out from the other knights if they knew anything about such a procedure. He never asked outright, just making mentions on how to get stronger quickly and stuff like that. Nobody seemed to be aware of it, though. This meant that he couldn't really do anything but observe the two, lest he reveals that he knows what could possibly be either a secret of the kingdom or something the man had done to himself for power. Then there was also the chance that whatever it was had forcefully entered the man's body, though if he was aware of it or not, Naruto did not know. So he simply observed the two, the Shadow Clone and Transformation Jutsu, both being his main ways, along with Sage Mode, which allowed the blonde to track both men anywhere within the walls of the kingdom easily. However, seeing as they didn't seem to be a threat at the moment, Naruto had stuck to just observing them and gathering information. He would then take any relevant information he could find to the king if he had to, though that was another interesting thing. He could send someone in the castle that had some weird power that nobody else had. It actually felt like the complete opposite to Dreyfus and Hendrickson, though there was also something dark within it. He was contemplating sneaking into the castle to find out who it was, but had decided against that. It probably wouldn't end well if he was found sneaking around the castle, and since he knew that there were probably sensors and other security measures in place to protect the royal family, he knew it was a bad idea. But that last thought Naruto finally got out of bed. Today was a day off from the Knights, so he would use it to do some more serious training. He then threw on a pair of black pants, a blue undershirt and his shinobi sandals. After getting dressed, Naruto held up his hand, with his palm facing forward. As he began to focus and use his power, a black vortex opened up before him. Once the portal was fully formed, which took only a few seconds, Naruto walked through it, with the portal closing instantly behind him. As Naruto exited through the other side, he found himself in a forest. He was now hundreds of miles from lions. This was where he came to practice without being watched. After a quick scan of the area to make sure he didn't have any unwanted visitors, Naruto made a familiar cross-like hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Instantly Naruto was surrounded by smoke and, when it cleared, 1,000 clones were revealed. You all know the drill. 500 of you continue working on the sub-elements. Keep experimenting so we can see if we can come up with any new ones. 300 of you start thinking up new jutsu we might be able to make, no idea is a dumb one. The rest of you will be fighting me using all of the basic elements and sub-elements we've already mastered. This was how Naruto had been training. He was a master of all the basic elements since the war. After coming to this world he had begun practicing the sub-elements. He could already mix all 5 elements together, so doing just 2 was a piece of cake. Things like wood and ice style jutsu were easy for him to begin using. Then Naruto had went on to fusing 3 elements. Once again it wasn't hard for him to figure out with his understanding of chakra. Now he was working on just mix and matching, trying out any combinations of 2 to 4 elements he could to see if he could come up with new things. This was the best way for him to pass the time, along with getting stronger. He had also came up with a few new jutsu, though most of those were still in the production stages. Stopping to think for a moment, Naruto wondered if he would have ever used any of these abilities if he hadn't came to this world. He didn't really know the answer, but he doubted it. As Naruto came out of his own thoughts, he noticed the remaining 200 clones were ready to begin. This was fine with him as he was also excited. This would be a fight with no power-ups, just their own abilities, as Naruto didn't want to have to rely on Kurama and Sage Mode for every fight. Especially since using Kurama's chakra made him a beacon that anyone could find easily. With that final thought, Naruto crouched and got ready to move. He could already see numerous elements beginning to be charged for use. He could only smirk as he knew that this was going to be a tough battle. All of his opponents were just as strong as he was, with all of his abilities and unpredictability. This was the best way for him to train. As if an invisible signal was given, both sides rushed towards each other. It was a few hours later when all of the fighting was finally done. Naruto laid alone in a crater, with numerous cuts and bruises covering his body. He was smiling, though. His clones had came up with even more absurd ways to use their abilities, which he was glad for. It wasn't long before his wounds began to steam and close up, with bruises fading away. Thanks Kurama. Was his thoughts as he began sitting up. As he looked at his surroundings he couldn't help but wince. Him and his clones had devastated the landscape for miles, making it completely unrecognizable to what it was before. He could see the effects of many different elements used in their little spar, like a frozen tundra, a volcanic pit and many more. I guess we really should have held back a bit more, whispered the blonde to himself. He would have to fix the landscape back to how he remembered it before he left. With that he finally stood. He then went about restoring the land and regrowing the forest, a task which took him a few minutes. After he was done he thought about what he should do next. He didn't really feel like staying in the barracks. Maybe I should finally go and buy some new clothes, mainly something with orange in it. He thought to himself. With his new plans, Naruto quickly returned to his room. He was trying to keep his abilities secret after all. He quickly went and took a shower, since he looked like he had just came out of a war zone, which he technically had. He then got redressed in a pair of brown pants with a matching colored button-up shirt and some black boots. While he wasn't really a fan of the footwear, he still tried to wear them on occasion. He quickly exited the barracks and began walking around town in search of new clothes. He also took this time to take in more of everything. This place still had a lot of new things for him to experience. As he walked he began a conversation with his tenant. Hey, Kurama, what do you think about this new world? This was the first time he had actually asked for the fox's opinion, even if them coming here was none of their fault. It's interesting at least, especially now that you're a knight. The abilities these people use are also quite interesting, though they do seem a bit one-dimensional. Naruto had to agree with the giant fox's assessment of the powers he had seen so far. Everyone he had met only seemed able to use one set of abilities, and, while some of them were vastly powerful, they could be even stronger if they added more to their arsenals. For instance, even if a shinobi specializes in a certain element, they still had other abilities to fall back on. If someone like Gilthinder had taken the time to learn something else, then Naruto would have had a harder time beating him. In fact, his initial fight with Gilthinder was the first time that Naruto had actually used his lightning style, and he had just taken a few minutes to fully get used to it. That was the true reason as to why he didn't just outright attack Gilthinder, because he was studying how he used his lightning, along with remembering how the Raikage used his own, then copying the two, which was easy since he was a master. It also helped that he had a massive amount of energy that Gil just couldn't match. This thought did make Naruto wonder though. As he had explained during their match, one way to increase speed was to increase power output. Naruto had never given his all, so he wondered how fast he would be if he put even half of his full power into the technique, let alone all of it. That would have to be another test to perform when he went back out for training, but for now he had to find some new clothes. He was tired of not having any orange. So that was how Naruto spent the rest of his day, just shopping around for new clothes, along with getting some good food. Well, the barracks did provide food, it wasn't the best. He couldn't really complain though since it was free. After he was finished shopping and had found a jacket that he absolutely adored, Naruto returned home. Home, huh? Who would have thought that he would ever refer to any place but the Hidden Leaf with that term? These thoughts caused Naruto to become depressed thinking about his old home and what had happened 2 months ago. This almost caused him to lose control of his anger again, but he held it back. There was no point to it anymore. It didn't take long before Naruto finally made it back to his room. It had changed a bit in the last month, with Naruto adding a dresser and a chest, along with putting up a pole to hang his clothes on. It was there that he hung his new jacket, which he couldn't wait to don along with the rest of his new outfit. After putting the rest of his purchases away, Naruto removed his clothes, leaving himself clad in his boxers, and crawled into bed. Before he could go to sleep there was a knock at his door. Naruto quickly got up and went to the door. He could already sense who it was on the other side, so he didn't hesitate to open it. As soon as the door opened, the face of Jericho was revealed. She was an apprentice Holy Knight. She had amber eyes and long silver hair done in a ponytail. She wore her standard armor with her robe with crosses on it on top. He had met her his first week as a knight and he could immediately tell that she didn't like him. He knew that it probably had to do with the fact that he had skipped apprenticeship and had become a knight. She had actually tried to challenge him because of that, though to be honest, it wasn't really much of a fight. She had never stood a chance against him and now she knew it. He had never boasted about it or anything like that though. While she did show him the respect of someone who outranked her, she also didn't do much to hide her dislike of him, though it wasn't hate. That was good at least. "What is it?" asked Naruto, though there was no annoyance in his voice. He knew that if she had come to his room this late, then there was probably a reason for that. He waited patiently as he saw something strange begin to happen. He watched as Jericho seemed to look him up and down before her face went completely red. Naruto, being Naruto, quickly entered her personal space and placed the back of his hand on her forehead. "Hey, are you feeling okay? You're looking a little red." This caused Jericho to blush even harder. While she was mad at him for just being able to join the rank of Holy Knights, she also admired him. She had witnessed some of his strength when she had gotten a chance to see one of his spars with Gilthinder, along with his utter defeat of her, which was why she was here. She had actually came to see if he would be willing to train with her also, but then this stupid idiot had came to the door in nothing but his underwear. She could safely say that she was committing the sight to memory. Then he had the gall to actually touch her, and that, along with his soft soothing voice, was enough to almost make her go wild. She might be an apprentice, but she was also a 17-year-old girl. She might dress like a boy to try and get more respect, but she was still a girl that wanted love. And she was loving what was in front of her. Naruto had already proven his strength, which had already allowed him to go up 2 whole ranks in only a month. This was definitely someone who could help her, but first she'd have to stop her blasted heart from trying to jump out of her chest, stupid hormones. With a few deep breaths she calmed her nerves. "I'm fine now, thanks for your concern," she started. "As for the reason I am here, well, I would like to request training from you if you don't mind." She spoke with the clarity and confidence of a soldier. She knew this man was above her in all standing, so she was willing to put her pride aside a bit to beg a little if she had to. She could not afford for him not to train her. As she watched his expression become contemplative, she began to prepare to beg a bit. "Why do you want me to help you train? Aren't you already an apprentice, plus you're also pretty strong already?" Jericho once more couldn't help the blush on her face. He had just given her a compliment and she doubted he knew how much it meant to her. This was another reason she admired him. She had heard the rumors and seen firsthand that he was always willing to help and was, for the most part, a pretty nice guy who respected everyone, even those lower than him. She just smiled as she responded. "Well, I thank you for your kind words. I feel as if my skills are severely lacking, which is why I would like it if you would help me." With that she stood and waited for his response. "Alright, then. Meet me at the training ground in the morning so I can test you and find out what all we need to work on." Jericho's smile was radiant. She didn't really smile much since she wanted to keep an air of seriousness about her, but she just couldn't help it. "You know your smile's really pretty, you should show it more." Those words from the blonde caused her blush to return again tenfold. The fact what made his words even more endearing was that she knew he wasn't just saying that to try and get with her or anything. That was another thing she had noticed, his denseness. Several female holy knights had already began flirting with him, but he never seemed to notice. Jericho figured that you would have to just come right out and tell him your feelings to get his attention. She couldn't bring herself to do that, though. Her goal since she was a kid was to be a great holy knight, so until she at least moved up from apprentice, she would keep these growing feelings to herself. She would settle for the time that she would get to spend with him for now and use it to find out even more about him. "Alright. I'll see you in the morning." With those words she turned around and left, smile still on her face. As Naruto closed the door he couldn't help but wonder where this new situation had come from. He was glad to help her out, but surprised that she had asked him of all people. This should be interesting. With those final thoughts the blonde once more entered his bed to try and get some sleep. He could already tell that tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day, he just hoped he didn't do anything to make Jericho dislike him any more than she already appeared to. The following morning found Naruto out of bed earlier than he normally would be. Jericho had requested training from him of all people, so he was going to do his best to help her. But that he quickly got up and ready for the day. After taking a quick shower and getting dressed he left the barracks. As soon as he exited the building he took to the rooftops since it was a faster way of travel. It only took him a few minutes to reach the training grounds, and to his surprise Jericho was already there waiting for him, while seemingly doing some light training of her own. He quietly observed her for a moment so he could try and get a good idea of what he was working with. He watched as she fought an invisible enemy, using some pretty good sword techniques. While Naruto was good with a sword he had had no idea how to use the type of swords they used at first. The only broadsword that he had ever seen back in his world was the Kusanagi blade that Orochimaru used. Naruto himself was more suited to a katana, but luckily Gil had been willing to help him get better with the blade. Which was another new addition to his arsenal. He had gotten himself a new sword, since apparently his blades made from lightning damaged everyone else's weapons when they sparred. So they had forced him to get an actual blade so that everyone wouldn't have to replace their equipment after every training session with him. The only ones whose weapons he hadn't damaged was Gilthunder and Hozer's. Hozer was another one of Gil's friends that he had met. He actually liked him because not only was he a chill guy, but he also used a wind element which was Naruto's own natural element. He had thrown a few ideas around with Hozer also, though he pretended that all of the ideas was for Hozer's use. He had even came up with some new ways to use his own ability, thanks to meeting him. Back to the moment Naruto watched as Jericho finally seemed to be finished with her mock spar. As she bent over a bit and began trying to catch her breath, Naruto decided he would surprise her. With little less than a flicker Naruto had moved from his original spot to right behind Jericho. He quickly leaned forward and whispered in her ear. "That was a pretty good performance. You really are something to watch." Whatever response he was expecting it wasn't a loud shriek that escaped from the girl. She then quickly spun around with her sword ready to cleave him in two. Naruto just reached up and caught the blade between his index finger and thumb. It took a few seconds for Jericho to realize who it was and another few to realize what he had done. She was actually quite impressed with how he was able to so effortlessly stop her attack. She had actually put a lot behind that swing, so for him to be able to stop it so casually was another testament to his power and how much he was above her. This further reinforced her belief that he would be able to help her get stronger. After she caught herself she began to speak. "Didn't anyone teach you that it's rude to sneak up on people and it's just plain stupid to so do when they have a weapon?" She tried to act as dignified as she could, but the sound she had just released made the whole appearance worthless. Naruto just kept a smile on his face as he replied. "No. Sorry, I must have missed that lesson, though I didn't know your voice could actually go that high." Jericho immediately began to blush at that. She had thought that she was quite aware of her surroundings at the time, but clearly she wasn't. It could also be that Naruto was just so good that he could sneak up on her, but she believed her first choice more. She had to try and save some face, after all. But the huff Jericho looked at the blade that was still in the blonde's grip. She tried to pull it free, but it wouldn't budge. She tried harder, but still nothing. In an act of frustration she literally pressed both feet against Naruto, using his body for leverage. Still the sword didn't move. To anyone who was observing the scene it would look like Jericho was standing on Naruto, who was also standing. It once more took a few seconds for Jericho to realize what she was doing. She blushed once more and stepped off of the blonde, landing back on the ground. "Sorry about that." She spoke while looking away from him. Naruto just laughed at that. Well, he wasn't expecting her to actually try that, he was still amused by it nonetheless. "Would you like your blade back?" he asked, voice teasing. Jericho just nodded her head while refusing to look at him. He just laughed as he handed her blade back. "Well, you seem to have some good swordsmanship, so I'll mainly focus on raising your strength, speed and magic." Jericho nodded and finally looked at him. "That sounds good. So, how will we be doing this?" she asked. She was surprised when Naruto disappeared from her view. She didn't have to wonder where he went for long as his foot became intimate with her stomach. She was immediately sent flying across the yard. After a few bounces and a roll, she finally came to a stop, though the pain didn't. She looked up at the blonde with tears almost pouring out her eyes while asking him the silent question, "Why?" Naruto's entire expression had changed by this point. Instead of his dazzling smile he usually wore, his face now looked like it was carved from marble, with absolutely zero emotions showing on it. "Don't think that I'm going to go easy on you because you're a girl or anything. You asked me to help you get better, so I'm going to push you to your absolute limits to help you. Now, get up." Jericho actually felt some fear from seeing him like this. She silently wondered to herself if this was the side of himself he showed on missions. No wonder he had been promoted so fast. It was like she was looking at a completely different person. "Fine. Since you won't get up willingly, I'll make you." That statement was Jericho's only warning. Taking his words to heart, she quickly rolled from her position while fighting through the pain. Her decision was proven to be a wise one as Naruto appeared where she was moments before and struck her previous position with a fist. Instantly the ground cratered from the force of the blow, which caused Jericho's eyes to widen. She wasn't too sure that she could take a blow like that easily. She was sure that at least something would have been broken, at least if he had hit her with that punch, which made her wonder. Was he actually trying to kill her or something? "Are you crazy? That attack could have killed me if it had hit." Jericho would have screamed the question at him, but she was still having some problems catching her breath. Naruto just looked at her with the same expressionless look on his face. "If that level of attack is more than you can take, then I'll push your body to its limits until an attack of that level isn't even an inconvenience to you. Now get up. This is the last time I'll go easy on you." Jericho once more looked at him in shock. "If this is what you consider taking it easy on me, then you really are crazy," she replied. Naruto could see the hesitance in her eyes and knew he had to do something to motivate her a bit. He just hoped that she'd forgive him for what he was about to say. "You might be right, or maybe this is just the extent of your power. Then again, what should I expect from an apprentice holy knight?" Jericho knew what he was trying to do, she really did. He was trying to get her riled up so that she'd keep going. He didn't care if she got angry or sad, he just wanted her to keep pushing on, so that's what she would do. She allowed the anger caused from his words to course through her. Immediately she had the energy to stand again, and she was going to use it. "Don't you ever look down on me. I might just be an apprentice for now, but someday soon I'll be one of the strongest knights in this kingdom, even stronger than you," she finished while pointing heatedly at him. Naruto just continued to stare at her. "Is that so? Do you really believe someone at your level could ever surpass me?" "Yes, I do. And when that day comes I'll be sure to rub it in your face," replied Jericho, determination shining in her visage. Naruto almost smiled at this, but forced it back down. He had to keep his role as the cold teacher up to make sure he pushed Jericho to her limits. "Well, why don't you show me the power of the person who will one day surpass me?" spoke Naruto as he finally pulled his sword from the sheath strung across his back and took up a basic stance. Jericho was quick to follow, though her stance was more rigid and proper than his, showing that she was taking this far more seriously than he had to, which was a given with both of their skill and power levels. "I hope you're ready, Naruto, cause here I come." With that, Jericho charged at the blonde. She went for a side swipe, but Naruto blocked with his own blade. She quickly pulled back and tried to hit him with a forward stab, but he once more moved his sword in the way to parry. She then jumped back to gain some distance. Luckily she wasn't followed by her opponent. Naruto seemed willing to allow her to make some type of plan of attack, which she was grateful for. Seeing as she had no other option besides her swordplay, she once more rushed towards the blonde while giving it all she had. Each attempt she made at attacking him was either blocked or dodged, with a few counterattacks in between. Jericho was quickly beginning to tire. She was already a bit winded from her own training she had done by herself, and now the taskmaster from hell was all over her ass. For a moment she actually regretted asking Naruto to train her, but that thought was banished just as quickly as it came. While his methods were barbaric, she could tell that they were working. Even now, after only a few hours of sparring, she could follow his movements a bit better. She knew it had to do with the fact that Naruto wasn't playing around with her, and it was either react to his attack and act accordingly, or get seriously injured. And she really didn't want to get injured. So with that thought she continued to push herself, never giving up or backing down. And for that the respect that Naruto held for her only grew. Naruto had also noticed something else as well. For some reason he could feel his body getting cooler, a feeling he knew well enough as being from ice. He could only smirk slightly as he had realized that Jericho was using her magic, though she didn't seem to notice. He had found something else to help her train with. If her magic really was ice related, then he'd have someone with another element to train with and help come up with new techniques. He could already see what he needed to work on, so for now he would continue at his current pace to see how long Jericho could last in a straight-up fight for her life. He knew he would also have to help her with her stamina as well. It was almost 2 hours later when Jericho actually couldn't go on, though he knew that if she was actually using her magic, she would have only lasted a few minutes at best. He was still quite impressed by her. It was at this moment that Jericho realized that they had an audience. She hadn't even really noticed them, being too busy trying to make sure she actually survived this new hell she had placed herself in. She was laying on her back and breathing heavily. Her body felt like shit and she was sure that her bruises had bruises. She only sighed as Naruto walked up beside her before kneeling next to her prone body. "I just want to say that I'm sorry about all those things I said earlier. I was just trying to get you in the mood, you know." He had an awkward smile on his face while he was scratching the back of his head. Jericho just glared at him for a minute before sighing. "Don't worry about it. I knew what you were doing and it actually worked, so thank you." Naruto's smile finally returned to normal after hearing that. "Well, you're welcome. I'll take you back to the Weird Fang's base so you can rest," spoke Naruto as he picked her up bridal style. He knew she wouldn't be able to move even after she was healed. So he would have to carry her back to her base. Jericho was a blushing mess by this point. She actually was glad by how things were turning out now. This alone made all of her previous torture worth it. There was just one problem. If Jericho wasn't so tired and her mind wasn't on the verge of shutting down, then she would have never said what she was about to say, but the above-mentioned problems along with the man she adored holding her in his arms caused her to say something very uncharacteristic. "No. Don't take me back to the base, I won't be able to rest good there. Just take me back to your room so we can sleep in peace," she said, mind half asleep already and not truly focused. If she was, then her blush would have been worse than Naruto's. Before he could retort, he noticed that Jericho was already out for the count. This left him with two options. He could either try and find her base to take her there, or he could just return to his room to allow her to rest in peace. He doubted that a group with the name Weird Fangs were a peaceful bunch to be around when trying to rest, which left him with one choice. Making his decision, Naruto walked off with Jericho in his arms. As soon as he had reached an area with nobody around, he immediately made a portal into his room. It wasn't a good look for a guy to be walking around town with an unconscious girl. People were sure to spread some rumors if they had seen him, so he went with the safest route. After stepping out of the portal, he quickly placed Jericho down on his bed. Then he began to heal her wounds since he didn't own any magic healing stones, so he would have to do it himself. After he had healed her, he tucked her under the sheets and stood back. He watched as she snuggled deeper in the bed, making herself comfortable, which caused him to smile. A yawn then escaped from his mouth. While he wasn't really tired, he could still use some rest. Once again, Naruto found himself with two options. He could either sleep in the bed and risk castration, or sleep on the floor and maybe get an earful when she woke up. It didn't take long for Naruto to make up his mind. He quickly took his shirt off and rolled it up to use as a sort of pillow. He then proceeded to lay down on the ground to get some rest. He'd clean his bed later since neither of them had taken a shower yet and were covered in dirt. He wasn't worried about it though. He was glad to allow her some peace after what he had put her through. She had earned it as far as he was concerned because she had refused to give up. With this final thought, Naruto closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. Within the Castle of Lions, King Bartra sat on his throne. He was having a monthly briefing meet with all necessary parties to find out the state of the kingdom, but it was his two great holy knights that had his attention. When he had asked how the knights were doing, they had quickly assured him that they were upholding their duties admirably, especially the new recruit who had been doing so well that he had raised 2 whole ranks in a single month. This had gotten the king's attention. He had the utmost faith in both men, so to hear that they had decided someone was worthy of that type of promotion was quite surprising to hear. "And who might this young knight be?" asked the king. He wanted to learn more about someone who was obviously working hard to protect his kingdom. "His name is Naruto Uzumaki, my lord, and he was recently instated last month, but his success on missions and the respect he has earned from the other knights is what earned him his promotion," spoke Dreyfus. The king rubbed his beard and thought at this. "And how old is this knight?" asked the king. Surely this man had to have a lot of experience to earn this type of praise. "From what we know, he's 17 right now, my lord." This time it was Hendrickson who answered. The king was actually surprised to find out that it was someone so young that they were talking about. "Really now? You mean to tell me that a mere child has garnered this much respect from the both of you? Asked the king incredulously. While he may be young, he has experience that those far older than him have yet to display, along with the fact he shows great power and control for one so young. Spoke Dreyfus again. While he respected the king, he wouldn't allow a knight's hard work to be dismissed just because of their age. The king, seeing they had misunderstood his question, was quick to clarify his question. I meant no disrespect to the boy's age, as I'm sure he worked hard to earn everything he has been given. I was just surprised by it. Tell me, by your estimation, how long do you think it will take him to reach diamond rank? Asked the king. He was truly curious about the boy's speculated rate of growth. Both Dreyfus and Hendrickson thought about the question. They knew that if Naruto kept up with his current rate of success, then he'd probably be able to reach diamond rank before the year was out. That would actually be the fastest that anyone had ever made it to that rank, but they had no illusions that Naruto wouldn't be able to do it. If he keeps up doing as well as he is now, then I can see him being diamond rank before the year is out. Spoke Dreyfus, getting a nod of agreement from Hendrickson. So he really is that good, huh? Started the king. Then I'd like to meet the young man who's putting so much effort into the betterment of this kingdom. He finished. Both present knights were expecting something like this to happen. When would you like to meet him, my lord? Asked Dreyfus. I will prepare a feast for him in 3 days' time to celebrate his hard work and show him my appreciation. Inform him to be at the palace on the eve of the given day, alright. Both men nodded at the king's request. After that, it wasn't long before the rest of the meeting was wrapped up. As soon as the meeting was over and the king allowed everyone left. Now alone in his throne room, the king was allowed to get lost in thought. Someone with that type of power might be exactly what we'll need in the coming months. For now, though, I'll try to get a read on the boy to see if he can be trusted with an important task. With this final thought, the king began making further plans for the coming holy war and other matters. In another part of the palace, a young girl could be seen walking the halls. This was Elizabeth Lyons, the third daughter of King Bartra, which made her a princess. She was just wandering around the castle well deep in thought. For the past few months she had noticed her father was becoming more stressed. She didn't know why, but she could never really get him to tell her why. He had said that he was just worrying too much about the future. She didn't doubt this as she knew about her father's ability vision, which literally allowed him to see the future. This allowed the king to prepare for things long before they even happened, which she suspected was why the kingdom was so peaceful. I really wish that father would let us in so we can help him. Thought Elizabeth while also thinking of her sisters. She also didn't like the fact that he was paying less attention to them. While the need for her father's attention had decreased since her younger years, where she actually used to act out just to get it, she still liked it when he paid attention to her. Sadly, he hadn't been doing much of that. I hope he handles whatever's bothering him soon. With that final thought, she continued to walk around the castle. Amber eyes groggily opened up to an unfamiliar room. Quickly the owner shot up in surprise. Looking around, the person quickly realized that they were in a bed, though the room was still unfamiliar. Before Jericho could begin to panic anymore, she noticed the sound of light snoring. She quickly peered over the edge of the bed and smiled when she saw Naruto there on the floor sleeping, with his shirt off. Once more Jericho found herself distracted by the sight in front of her, but it didn't last long as she finally came to a realization. She was alone with Naruto in his room. She quietly wondered to herself why she was here, before the memories came back to her. The blush on her face was massive. She had actually told Naruto to bring them back to his room. Why the hell did she do that? Even if she knew her base would be rowdy, she still could have just told him to take her to her house, though she really didn't want to see her brother. She quickly blamed her tiredness and hormones for the decision she made. She then had to wonder why Naruto had even considered her suggestion. Did he want to take her back to his room? As she looked herself over, she noticed that all of her clothes were still in place. Of course they are. Naruto's not the type to take advantage of someone. Thought Jericho, cursing the fact that she had such thoughts about the blonde. She could tell that the only thing Naruto had done to her body was heal it, which she would also have to thank him for, even though he was the reason for her injuries in the first place. She had asked him for that anyway. As she finished those thoughts, she began to look around. This was her first time actually seeing in his room. She hadn't really been paying much attention to it the night she had came here to ask for training, since other things were occupying her mind then. She couldn't help but to feel a little sad looking around the room. It just looked so bleak, having no type of pictures or anything to show that it was someone's home. There wasn't anything that seemed to make this room scream that it was Naruto's. After observing the bland room, she leaned back over the bed to look at the blonde still sleeping on the floor. She then looked at his face and a thought passed through her head. It was something that she always wanted to do, but could never bring herself to actually try. Now was the perfect time, however. With that, she slowly reached out her hand towards his cheek. She always wondered how his whisker marks felt, and now she would find out. As her palm finally rested on his cheeks, she couldn't help the smile on her face. She was quick to notice that the whiskers were indents in his face, though not deep. As she continued to rub his cheeks, she couldn't help but remember the first time she had met him and the first time he had defeated her. Flashback. Jericho had been hearing a lot of rumors this last week about a new knight that had practically walked in off the street and gotten a position without having to do any apprenticeship under anyone. Naturally, this information pissed her off, as she had been working hard to get promoted from being just a simple apprentice, but she couldn't seem to advance for some reason. So, because of this, she wanted to see what was so special about this mystery guy. With a mission in mind, Jericho went around Lyons asking different knights about this guy, and she had found out quite a bit about him, including where he trained. It was thanks to that information that she made her way to one of the training grounds. Her information was proven correct when she came upon two men sitting together and talking, with a woman sitting nearby. The woman she didn't really know, but she knew the diamond rank knight, Gilthander. She could also guess who the other man was thanks to the description she had gotten of him from the other knights. Blonde hair, blue eyes and whiskers on his cheeks, though none of them had actually told her that he was about the same age as her. This new revelation had the effects of both surprising her and pissing her off further. What did this guy, someone who was just as young as her, have that she didn't? She had been training for most of her life to try and achieve what this guy had in an hour at best. That thought just raised her anger more as she stormed over to the two men. Their attention was immediately on her, since it wasn't hard for them to notice her approaching. "Are you the new Crystal Knight, Naruto Uzumaki?" she asked angrily. This just got a raised eyebrow from Naruto before he replied. "I was. Now I'm an emerald rank. We were just celebrating my promotion, would you like to join us?" The shock that Jericho was feeling right now surpassed any she had ever felt in her life. "How the hell did you already rank up? You've only been here for around 2 weeks from what I've learned. A promotion this quickly is unheard of." She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Naruto just gave her a huge smile while scratching the back of his head. "Yeah, that's what Hendrickson said as well, but they believe that someone with my power level and abilities would be better suited for higher ranked missions, so they promoted me." He finished with a chuckle. This just made Jericho livid. She had to find out what was so special about this man, what he had that she didn't, and there was only one real way to do that. Fight me. It would be those 2 words that Jericho would soon come to regret. "Why would I want to fight you?" Naruto asked curiously. Now, while Naruto wasn't trying to be insulting or anything when he asked that question, Jericho thought he was. In her mind she heard him asking why he would want to waste time fighting someone weaker than him. Jericho couldn't stand being underestimated by anyone, which she thought Naruto was doing, so she quickly pulled out her blade to attack. The 2 men before her didn't even seem bothered by her sudden act of hostility. Instantly Jericho found herself on her back looking up at the sky, with 2 swords pointed at her. All she had seen was a flash before they had her pinned, and there was nothing she could have done to stop it. Now she realized that she was outclassed. Not just by Gilthander, but Naruto as well, as she was sure he could have handled her on his own. "What was that about?" asked Naruto, sounding annoyed. Jericho just closed her eyes to hide the tears that wanted to flow. This was what it took to become a knight. Overwhelming power so that you could handle any threat to the kingdom, something that she wasn't gifted with. "Do you think we should report this?" asked Gilthander. Naruto just shook his head in the negative. "No. She looks like she has a lot on her mind right now, so we'll let this slide," spoke Naruto. This caused Jericho's eyes to widen. She had just attacked a superior officer. If they reported her, the consequences of her action would be detrimental. She could even lose her apprenticeship. "Why? I attacked you, so why protect me?" she asked the blonde. Well, she was glad that he was willing to let this go, she had to know why. "Maybe because you seem sad. If you want to talk to someone, then I'm always around, unless I'm on a mission, of course," spoke the blonde with his signature grin on his face. Jericho couldn't believe what he was saying. It was then that the 2 men stepped back, with Naruto holding out his hand for her to take. She did and was easily lifted up off the floor by him, however, due to Naruto's ridiculous strength and Jericho not being prepared for it, she found herself pressed against his chest. He had put a bit more strength than necessary, which had pulled Jericho right into him. "Sorry about that," said Naruto as he stepped back a bit. "Don't worry about it," replied Jericho while looking at the ground. For some reason she couldn't look at him right now. "Sorry about attacking you guys as well." Naruto just waved her off. "Not a problem. Most of my friends have attacked me before. Hell, even Gil here has attacked me, though that was because I was sneaking around the training ground," said Naruto. Jericho just nodded at that, glad that he at least appeared to forgive her. She really didn't want to get into trouble for one act caused by her emotions. Seeing no further point in being here, she turned around and prepared to leave. Before she had gotten too far, she heard Naruto speaking again. "Hey, I didn't get your name," he said to her. She stopped and pondered if she should answer him, but realized that it was the least she could do. "My name's Jericho." Naruto smiled at that and she turned around and continued to leave. From that day she would continue to watch the blonde and had come to greatly respect his power from the spars she saw him participate in. She also was quick to realize that she was beginning to get weird feelings for him, which made her act hostile whenever she was around him to hide how she really felt. She doubted that he would even feel the same way about her anyway. Flashback end. Jericho continued rubbing Naruto's cheek as she was lost in thought. This would soon come to an end when she heard a voice speak. "You know, I thought that you were going to try and strangle me in my sleep. This is a lot better, though." Jericho's whole body froze. It was at this moment that she noticed a pair of blue eyes looking at her mischievously, with a smirk of the same nature soon appearing on his face. Jericho looked at him in shock, which quickly turned to horror when she realized what she was still doing. With a loud shriek, Jericho recoiled as if she had been burned, but had moved back so hard and fast that she actually fell off the other side of the bed. It was at this moment that Jericho wished she could just disappear. Her embarrassment just grew when she heard Naruto laughing as he stood up. "Man, you should have seen your face. It was priceless. I wish I had a camera to take a picture," spoke the blonde as he continued to laugh hysterically. Jericho was mortified at this point, but there was something she needed to know. "Were you up this whole time?" she asked. "Yep, though I was surprised that you'd pet me like some animal, though it did feel kind of good," spoke Naruto while scratching his cheek. Jericho didn't know why, but she felt some happiness knowing that it felt good for him. "So why didn't you stop me earlier?" She really wanted to know why he had just let her do that. "Well, like I said, I thought that you were going to try and attack me really for the training session I put you through, but then you began rubbing my birthmarks and it felt good, so I let it slide as payment for you not giving up today." Jericho felt her blush deepen a bit more. It was then that she remembered something that Naruto had just said. "What's a camera?" she asked curiously. She had never heard of it and wondered what it was. Naruto just tensed and cursed his slip-up. He had forgotten that this world's technology was practically non-existent. "It's something we use where I'm from to take a picture. It's like a painting, but more real looking, and it only takes a few seconds to finish." He tried to give her the best description he could. Jericho was impressed by what this camera could do, but then she found another question on her lips. "Where exactly are you from? You don't seem to talk about where it is you came from." Naruto just sighed at this. He knew that it was only a matter of time before he was asked something like this. "Well, I'm not from Britannia, but the place that I came from is pretty far from here." Jericho would have continued with her question, but she could see that this topic was making him sad. Luckily it was her stomach that helped to change the topic by growling. Jericho once more felt the blush on her face as Naruto smiled at her. "Sounds like you're hungry. Let's go out for something to eat, my treat," said Naruto. This simple suggestion almost sent Jericho catatonic. Is he asking me out on a date? Is this what it's like to have a guy ask you out? These were a few of the thoughts going through her mind. As she noticed that he was still waiting for an answer, she quickly shot to her feet. "Sure. I would like to go for a meal with you." Jericho cursed how eager she sounded. She then noticed a problem. She was still dirty from their training, and so was he. She quickly walked up to him. "I'm going to get freshened up and you do the same. I'll meet you out front in an hour, okay?" Before Naruto could respond, she was already out the door. Naruto could only scratch his head in confusion. He really didn't understand women at all, and he doubted that he ever would. With a shrug, Naruto got out some new clothes and went to freshen up. An hour later, Naruto exited the barracks and looked around for Jericho, but couldn't find her. He wondered if she had changed her mind or something, but before he could wonder too much, he heard Jericho calling his name. As he turned around, his jaw dropped in shock. Before him was Jericho wearing a long lavender dress that showed off her figure quite well. She also had her hair out of its signature ponytail, with her hair now framing her face like a halo, and was cascading down her back. He watched as she walked up towards him, but she was looking at the ground now. "Wow, Jericho, you look amazing," said Naruto while grinning. He didn't know much about women, but he was sure they liked compliments, or at least he thought so. His efforts proved fruitful as Jericho brushed a few loose strands of hair behind her ear. "Thanks. You don't look too bad yourself," she replied. Naruto just chuckled at her response. He did appreciate the compliment, even though he wasn't dressed much different than he was earlier, with the only change being the color of his shirt, which was now gray. "So, is there anywhere specific that you'd like to go to, since it's my treat?" asked Naruto. Jericho thought about it for a minute before choosing a small restaurant that wasn't too far from the barracks. She had eaten there a few times, so she knew that the food was good along with the prices. The two walked in silence, one from embarrassment and the other not really knowing what to say in the situation, until they came to the one-story building that the restaurant resided in. As the two entered and were shown to their seats and given a menu with the waiter leaving to give them some time to decide what they wanted, Jericho decided to try and make some small talk. "I noticed that you don't have any personal decorations in your room. It makes me even more curious about you." "Oh really? And what exactly are you so curious about?" asked Naruto. "Well, for instance, where are you from? Do you have any family? What was your old home like and why did you leave to come here?" Naruto quickly became pensive, which Jericho noticed. He was contemplating if he should answer her or not, but decided that there wasn't really any harm in doing so. "Well, I don't have any family, not anymore anyway. My home was a beautiful place where everyone was finally starting to get along, but I was taken and brought here." Jericho's eyes widened at this revelation. Naruto was forcefully removed from his home. Who the hell had the power to do that? "Are you going to return there someday?" asked Jericho. She was slightly dreading his answer. Naruto grew a sad smile on his face before replying. "Why don't we talk about something else, like what is your life like?" asked Naruto. Seeing that he didn't want to talk any more about his home caused Jericho to have conflicting emotions. Was he going to head back home or was he going to stay here? If he left, then what would she do? She wouldn't say that she was so in love with him to go with him, but she knew that it wouldn't be long until she probably was. That raised the question of if she would be willing to give up her dream for him. At this moment she could say the answer was no, she had worked too long and hard to get where she was and was too close now to just give it up. Before Jericho could begin talking about her own life, the waiter returned to take their orders. They both quickly ordered their food, with Jericho ordering a fish meal and Naruto ordering steak. As the waiter left, Jericho began to speak. "Well, my life isn't really anything special. I was born and raised in the kingdom and lived with my older brother, he's actually a knight as well." "Wow. I didn't know you had a brother. What's he like?" asked Naruto, curiously. "He's complicated, but he's also the person I want to prove wrong the most." Naruto was surprised by the fire that appeared in Jericho's eyes. "Well, if it means that much to you to prove him wrong for whatever reason, then I know you will," Naruto said with a smile. Jericho smiled back. She was glad that he believed in her, even though he didn't know why she wanted to prove her brother wrong. "Thanks. In all honesty, I believe that your training will be able to help me do just that." "Well then that means that this training just became even more important, so I'll have to make sure I don't let you down." Jericho wanted to tell him that he could never let her down, but she held her tongue. With a bit more small talk, the two finally received and then finished their meals. The two soon left after Naruto had paid the bill. "So when's our next training session going to be?" asked Jericho. "We can train on whichever day you or I don't have any missions. So until one of us receives one, we can go every day if you want, or you can pick dates through the week that you're good with." Jericho thought about it for a minute before coming to a decision. "We can go every day. That way I'll be able to improve faster, plus we can just send a message to each other on days we won't be able to make it." "That's good to hear. You'll also be able to watch me and Gilthander train, so you might be able to pick up a few things from that." Jericho could feel her excitement beginning to rise. While she knew the training was going to be hard, if today's session was anything to go by, she would also have two of the strongest knights in the kingdom helping her. What more could she possibly ask for? "I'd like to thank you again for everything you're doing for me," Jericho said with pure gratification in her tone. Naruto just smiled at her. "It's no problem. You might not like me much, but I'm happy to help you get stronger." This statement caused Jericho's eyes to widen in shock. He actually thought that she didn't like him, but he still agreed to help her train. The thought alone made her sad, but before she could try and correct him, she was interrupted by another voice. "Jericho, is that you?" Her eyes once more widened in shock. This was the one person that she didn't want to see right now. As she looked towards the voice, she was quick to notice the form of her brother Gustav. He looked like a male version of Jericho with short hair. He wore a long-sleeved blue shirt with a darker blue short cloak over it, with quarter-moon symbols on the collar. He also had on dark blue pants and brown shoes and belt and a large silver beaded chain around his neck. As he began walking towards her, Naruto also caught sight of him. "What are you doing here, Gustav?" hissed Jericho. She really wished that she had paid better attention to her surroundings, so she could have avoided this encounter, but it was nearly impossible for her to focus on much else when around Naruto. "I was just returning home, but I wasn't aware that you were in the area. I thought that you would be at the Weird Fangs base, aren't they who you are apprenticed under?" It was at this time that Jericho noticed the area she was in. Without even noticing it, she had begun heading in the direction of her home when they left the restaurant, which had helped to make this encounter more possible. This just caused Jericho to release a tired sigh. "Who's this, Jericho? He actually looks a bit like you," said Naruto. It was at this moment the two siblings remembered their third party. "Naruto, I'd like you to meet my older brother Gustav," spoke Jericho while gesturing to both men respectively. Upon hearing the blonde's name, Gustav's eyes widened. Wait, you're Naruto Uzumaki. You're the mystery guy that I've been hearing about that rose 2 ranks in a month's time. Gustav's shocked exclamation got a raised eyebrow from Naruto. Yeah, that's me. It's nice to meet you, Gustav, though I wasn't expecting to meet you so soon after finding out about you," said Naruto with a smile on his face. This caused Gustav to shift his attention towards Jericho. "So you've talked about me. May I ask what my sister has told you?" requested Gustav. He didn't know what his sister might have said about him, but he didn't want her tarnishing his reputation to his colleagues. "Well, she said that you were a complicated guy, along with the fact that she wants to prove you wrong about something which my training should help with," answered Naruto, honestly. He saw no harm in telling Gustav this information. This caused Jericho to blush a bit and Gustav to once more look at her. "Why are you wasting your time training her?" asked Gustav, voice cool. "It's not a waste of time to me, and I'm doing it because she asked. What other reason would I need?" inquired Naruto. He didn't really like the way that Gustav had asked his question. "And what exactly are you training for?" asked Gustav, this time addressing Jericho. He had a feeling, but he wanted to be sure. Jericho just looked at her brother with a fierce and determined look before replying. "I'm getting him to train me so that I can get stronger and rise from being an apprentice." Naruto smiled at the determination she was showing, but Gustav frowned. "Haven't I already told you that it's impossible for you to become a holy knight? You're just wasting everyone's time and making yourself look ridiculous." This statement from Gustav earned him an angry reply, but not from Jericho. "Hey, what the fuck are you saying to Jericho? What type of older brother are you to just try and tear down her dream like that? You should be encouraging and trying to help her succeed, not tell her that she can't. Don't worry, Jericho, I believe in you." This outburst from Naruto caught both siblings off guard. While Gustav was looking at Naruto with an annoyed expression, Jericho was looking at him with something else. "Do you really believe in me?" Jericho asked in almost a whisper. "Of course I do. Didn't I tell you that I'd push you to your limits and help you to become a knight? Well, I never go back on my word. I don't care if it takes a month or even years, I'll always be there to help you until you reach your goals." Jericho could feel the tears brimming, along with the burning in her cheeks. Someone who was already so strong had so much faith in her. Someone who she had only known for a short time and who thought that she disliked him. This was the first time that anyone had ever stood up for her and her dreams, and to stand up to her brother of all people made the whole thing even better. Jericho, without really thinking, instantly rushed Naruto and captured him in a hug. "Thank you so much for believing in me. I also give you my word that I won't let you down," she whispered in his ears while trying to hold back her tears. Naruto just hugged her back and smiled before he replied. "I never thought for a second that you'd let me down, and don't you think for a second that you could?" This caused Jericho to look at him in surprise and see the smile on his face. She smiled back before hugging him again and nodding into his chest. It wasn't long before Gustav reminded them that they still had company, along with some attention they were garnering from being in the middle of the street. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I have a word with you in private please, Sir Naruto?" It was at this moment that Naruto and Jericho separated. Naruto considered Gustav's request before giving the man a nod. "Would you give us a few minutes please, Jericho?" he asked. Jericho looked between the two men before nodding and stepping away. "Well, what is it you wanted to talk about?" asked Naruto once Jericho was out of range. "I'd like to know what your intentions are concerning my sister." This question got a raised eyebrow from Naruto. "Well, my intentions are to help her get stronger and become a holy knight, since that's what she wants to do." "And do you really think that you can do that? Do you think that you can make her truly strong?" "Yes, I do. I'm planning on pushing her to her limits and beyond, and hopefully, by the time I'm through, there won't be much she can't handle." "So by the time you're through with her she will be able to protect herself?" "Yes, she will. She's already really strong, but I'll try to at least triple her strength, if not more." This statement from Naruto seemed to lessen the worry that had appeared in Gustav's eyes, but he had to make sure of one more thing. "Will you protect her and make sure no harm comes to her until she's strong enough to do it herself?" he asked. The way Naruto answered this question was very important. "Of course I will. Jericho is my friend, even though she doesn't really like me. That means that I'd defend her with my life, no matter how strong she is." Gustav could see the honesty in the blonde's statement, which allowed him to release a relieved sigh. "Then I thank you for all that you're doing for my sister, and I can finally start supporting her dream. If there's anything you need that I might be able to help you with, then don't hesitate to ask," stated Gustav. This caught Naruto's attention. "Actually, there is one thing. Jericho seems to have ice-type magic, so I was wondering if you had any ideas that might help me to train her to use it?" asked Naruto. Well, he was a master of using ice as well, he was teaching someone who used magic, not chakra. "I'm actually an ice type as well. I'm kinda surprised that she is too, but I should have expected that. Can she use it yet? Asked Gustav. No, she just used it subconsciously. Is there a trick or something for her to use it fully, or do I just have to wing it? Accessing magic is different for every user, though there is one thing that's sure to pull a person's magic out, and that's a huge emotional situation. Whether they're fighting for their life, or extremely sad or angry about something. Naruto nodded at this. Jericho was in an extremely emotional state earlier when she used her magic, so Gustav was right about his explanation. That just meant that he'd have to continue doing what he was doing until she could freely use her magic. Thanks for the info. I now have an idea on what I need to do so that she can use her magic freely. You're not as bad as you try to make yourself out to be. Said Naruto as he held out his fist with a smile on his face. Gustav was quick to catch on to what he wanted as he held out his own fist with a smile. The two then bumped fist, and Naruto could feel the trust that Gustav was putting into him to help and protect Jericho, which caused his smile to widen more. But that the two separated and Gustav gave him a nod before turning around and heading on his way. As he walked past Jericho, he gave her a small smile and nod as well, which caused the girl's eyes to widen as she couldn't help but wonder what the fuck had just happened. The two men had looked like they were arguing at first, but then they looked like two old friends. And she had a strong feeling that her brother's actions a while ago was somehow to say he supported her. That was the most shocking part. Did Naruto literally just change her brother's mind, something that she herself hadn't been able to do in her 17 years of life? If he had, then she had really been underestimating Naruto. Jericho quickly rejoined Naruto with what felt like a million questions running through her mind, but there was one she wanted answered the most. What did you say to my brother? She asked. Nothing but the truth, and thanks to that he finally agreed to start supporting you. Once more Naruto was hugged tightly by Jericho. You really are amazing. She said as she pulled back. Yeah, I know. Was Naruto's cheeky reply as he had a smug grin on his face. This caused Jericho to give him a playful glare. Hey, don't get too big-headed. Was her amused response. The two laughed among each other for a few moments after that. As they finally calmed down, Naruto asked her a question. Do you want me to continue walking you home? He asked curiously. No thanks. I'm going to go and have a conversation with my brother and see if he's really willing to support me now, but thanks again for everything. Jericho said. She was truly grateful for everything Naruto had done for her in just a single day. Naruto just nodded at her before turning around and beginning to head back home. Alright then, see you tomorrow so that we can continue training then. Said Naruto. Yeah, sure, and I hope we can go out to eat together again sometime. Responded Jericho. Naruto just looked at her and nodded in acceptance at her proposal before continuing on his way. Jericho smiled as she also turned around to head home. She was anxious to talk to her brother, but she wanted to be sure about his new feeling towards her goal. She once more couldn't help but think how incredible her blonde superior was. It didn't take Naruto long before he reached the barracks. He silently contemplated if he should try and find someplace else to live, but saw no real need to rush anything yet. With that he walked inside the building and headed towards his room. As he walked he was considering if he should go and request a mission to take Jericho on. Not anything too tough, but something that can help her grow and show her how higher ranked missions differed from what she might be used to. He decided to do it and show Jericho the ropes, as people said. With that Naruto finally reached his room door. He quickly fished his key out of his pocket and opened the door, though something on the floor caught his attention. It was an envelope with extravagant writing on it. Naruto picked the letter up and went inside his room while closing the door behind him. As he sat on the bed he saw what was written on the envelope as he read it. Sir Naruto Uzumaki. He read to himself. Naruto quickly opened the envelope and pulled out its contents, which revealed a letter. Opening it, Naruto began to read. Dear Sir Naruto. This letter is to inform you that you have been cordially invited to the royal palace on behalf of King Bartra in 3 days' time for a celebration in your honor. You are expected to appear on the eve of the 3rd day as declared by the king. This celebration is to thank you for your services and commitment to the kingdom, and the king hopes that you will be able to attend. He hopes to see you there and thank you in person. Signed. The King's Court. Naruto read and reread the short letter at least 3 more times with shock. In the time he had been here he had never seen any member of the royal family, so to be invited to the castle by the king himself was quite surprising. Are you planning to go? Asked Kurama, who had once more spent his day sleeping. He wouldn't wake up unless on rare occasions, or if Naruto needed his help in a fight. Naruto seemed to think about it for a second before answering. I'm not really sure if I have a choice in the matter or not, since it was the king himself that invited me, along with it being a party in my honor. Replied Naruto. Kurama just nodded at his answer. You're right, and since we don't really know what type of person the king is, it'll be better if we didn't do too much to anger him so you can stay here. Kurama might not really care about lions, but he did care about Naruto's happiness. Naruto silently agreed as he began wondering how he would have to act around the king. While he didn't really care about things like respect in the traditional sense, he also didn't want to risk the chance of getting forced out of the kingdom. He was finally finding something in this world to make him happy, and he would try not to mess it up and lose that chance. So he would try to be on slightly better behavior than he normally was, though if the king was a beep or something, then all bets were out the window. But the sign Naruto placed the letter inside of his drawer. He then began to strip out of his clothes so that he could go to bed, with him having cleaned it after he had taken a shower earlier. "What do you think the future holds for us, Kurama?" asked Naruto quietly. "I don't know, but no matter what it is, just know that I'll always have your back." "Yeah, I know. Same here for me too." With this, the two friends drifted off to sleep once more, neither knowing what the future held, but both prepared to help the other get through it no matter what. In the southern part of Britannia there was a relatively new kingdom called Camelot. It was in this kingdom that two particular people were having a very important discussion. These two people were Arthur Pendragon, king of Camelot, and Merlin, his advisor. Arthur was a young man with orange hair and violet eyes. He wore golden armor and a white cloth wrapped around his neck and hanging like a cape. Merlin was the opposite of Arthur. She was a slim woman who appeared to be in her late 20s or early 30s. She had short-cut black hair and gold eyes. Her outfit consists of a highly revealing and open fur-collared long coat with heart-shaped buttons, short shorts that resemble panties with a heart on it, and thigh-high boots. "Have you been able to locate our visitor?" asked Arthur. "I never lost track of him. He's now within the Kingdom of Lions and appears to have become one of their holy knights," replied Merlin. The person they were talking about was obviously Naruto Uzumaki. "That's good to know. We can't allow someone with such destructive capabilities to just be running around freely, especially since you think that he might have a grudge against you." Merlin, who Naruto knew as Violet, had informed Arthur of Naruto after he had went berserk. He was far too close to the kingdom for people not to notice the huge explosion from his attack that had wiped entire mountain ranges off of the map. The two had quickly came up with a story to tell the people of Camelot in order to avoid a panic. They had said that they were just testing a few new types of magic for the protection of the kingdom. Luckily their ruse had worked since Merlin was known to be an extremely strong mage. They were both still worried about the blonde who was on the loose though, but luckily he had headed away from Camelot after he calmed down. "You said that you didn't know what had set him off, right?" asked Arthur, to which Merlin nodded. "That's right. It was just like any other day that I had went to visit him, except when I got there he was on the ground crying and looked to be in pain. When I tried to get his attention he just attacked me." Merlin had already told Arthur this story many times in the past few months, but she still couldn't believe what she had seen. Never in her very long life had she seen someone with such destructive capabilities as Naruto, not even among the Saiyans. The power of his single attack would have wiped Camelot off the map at least 10 times over and still had power left to spare. She could also tell that the attack wasn't even a drop in the boy's power. While this would normally scare people away, Merlin found herself even more drawn to the boy. There was one thing that Merlin could say, though. Naruto Uzumaki had rose to the top of her do not fuck with list, and she'd be damned if she tried to make an enemy out of him. It's a good thing that that wasn't what she wanted. Because of the blonde's show of power she had worked to keep an eye on him, though he seemed to be able to notice when she was trying to watch him. So instead she had relied on her sensing capabilities to track him. "What do you think we should do about him?" Arthur asked for her opinion. This was the topic of many of their conversations as of late, but they had no definitive answer. "I can try and teleport him someplace and then trap him in my perfect cube, but I'm not 100% sure that it'll be able to hold him," replied Merlin. While it was stated that it was unbreakable, she had never held someone with that much power in one. While she would have loved to try and find out if Naruto could break out of the cube, she couldn't risk the fact that he could and might try even harder to come after her. Now she was really glad that she had always kept her cloak on and name hidden around him. "Then I guess we'll need to head to Lions for more reasons than we originally thought," said Arthur. Merlin could only nod at this, since if Naruto was in Lions, then a meeting between them in the future might be unavoidable. "I'll try and come up with a few more precautions until then," said Merlin as she turned and exited Arthur's throne room. She had a lot of things to do to make sure that all of her plans went the way they were supposed to. As she walked down one of the halls in the castle, she couldn't help but think about her goal and the blonde she had brought to this world. While chaos was creation, she could safely say that Naruto was destruction. If chaos could create the world, then Naruto could destroy it just as easily. She was the only one who had truly gotten to sense the ocean of power that he held, and it made her truly excited, but also sad that she didn't get to fully study it. When chaos rises, I wonder what will happen and who's stronger. She contemplated as she thought about pitting chaos against Naruto, though she didn't know how much of a fight it would be. She was sure that it would be interesting though. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.